that one.
Um, don't do this very often. So good evening, all. My name is Cade Lehman. I reside at 1608 Manufacturers Drive. Good evening to all, everybody, the chairman, the distinguished board members. I'm going to try to make my way through this. I'm very nervous, so hear me out.
That's fine. Just relax.
We're just people, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I didn't do well in public speaking. So anyways, I would like to comment tonight on the storage facility proposed at location 141 Blow Flats Road here in Williamsburg. There's been a great push in this country for all things branded green are good for all. I must raise my hand in opposition to this ideal. I do not support the proposed location of a 22 megawatt battery storage facility on Blow Flats. This is not the best and highest ideal for this parcel. This project does fit well within the zoning guidance of M2 general industry. However, Blow Flats contains many residential dwellings units built long before the M2 designation was overlaid. The key word of mixed use on the comprehensive plan land use map must also be considered during your deliberations. The Grove certainly has its socioeconomic challenges, but many people call this area home. So a new development needs to be considered for the health and safety of those in its surround. This location, no matter the amount of well-crafted vegetation frontage to conceal the facility's existence will not mitigate the looming threat of thermal runaway, an industry term for chain reaction. Through a catastrophic failure of the devised engineering controls, the facility will release into the environment a life-altering combination of toxic gases containing hydrogen fluoride, hydrogen chloride, carbon monoxide, and other trace elements of combustible products. Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, has an 8-hour permissible exposure limit in the parts per million of these gases. Hydrogen fluoride is 3 parts per million, hydrogen chloride is 5 parts per million, carbon monoxide is 50 parts per million. These limits will be exceeded within minutes of the thermal event, creating an immediate risk to life to 8 mobile dwelling units to the southwest and 5 housing units directly west of the proposed facility, plus an additional high risk to life of 5 dwelling units to the north of Commerce Boulevard. There is no extinguishing a thermal event. It must self-extinguish over time, and this will mean a complete evacuation of Blow Flats Road for an extended period of time. If approved, this will set 2 firsts for James City County. It will also be the first and only utility battery storage for the peninsula, and will also host the largest battery storage facility in the Virginia Dominion Energy's portfolio. Virginia Dominion Energy has completed 3 other battery storage facilities previously, and all hold label as pilot projects. You will find that 2 of these forerunner projects, Scott Solar Farm in Powhatan County, New Kent Substation in New Kent County, are in very rural environments, and the Ashland Substation in Hanover County, though close to some residential house dwelling units, it has just 10% of the capacity of the proposed. As much as the Tri-Cities has many firsts, this may be time to consider caution in a later entry to this new technology. I do support the use of battery storage technology to smooth out the demand curve. This is an effective means of mitigating possible brownouts. But as with all real estate, it's location, location, location. I believe that Dominion Energy has demonstrated in their own press release of July 28th of this year the appropriate locations for battery storage facilities, as in either rural solar farms or in existing substations. As the case may be, the Skiffs Creek substation is less than a mile from the proposed site, an excellent location for this emerging technology that still has room to mature before being injected into neighborhoods and business districts. I would ask the board to consider a few items before greenlighting this project. 1, do you feel confident that you have all the facts? Energy storage, no matter the type, has many risks and must be considered carefully. Please consider postpone it to a later date if in doubt. 2, have you conversed with the county's first responders on the introduction of this new technology to the county? Are they equipped for this new challenge? What new assets will need to be acquired? What new training and tactics will need to be developed? Virginia Dominion Energy is an energy company that relies on your resources no matter what the response plan is. 3, will and should the county use existing tax revenue for the advancement to the emergency services network? There will be no new jobs created through this project. It will be remotely monitored facility with minor maintenance. Maybe a levy should be considered instead of relying on property tax and equipment amortization for funding. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Lyman. Appreciate that. And I'll go ahead and still close the public hearing now and ask staff if these were issues that were considered in the application.
So I'll jump in here a little bit first, and I know that Paxton will back me up if I miss an item. As with our typical land use process, we send the master plan out and the proposed details out to all of the county reviewing agencies. And in this instance, that did include the fire department. In this instance, this is very much a new technology. And as far as the master plan goes, the fire department did not raise those concerns for the legislative component of this case. We did chat with them, and we pulled over a condition that we've used previously on especially electrical generation facilities, some of our solar farms, and you may recall many years ago that sort of the switching station, the one that came through. So we do have in there several proposed conditions from staff to take number 6, for example, an emergency management plan. Facility operators shall prepare and maintain an emergency management plan to address situations that may require response from James City County public safety personnel, including without limitation, fire, safety, and emergency response. Then there's several subcomponents of that. I do think there will be a lot of details to be figured out, but again, staff has proposed that as a condition that would be figured out as part of site plan approval should you choose to approve the application tonight. Beyond that, for some of those technical requirements, I'll defer to the applicant and the applicant's team. I don't know if they have experience with those types of questions or.
Mr. Holt, the gentleman brought up an interesting component with the emergency response. So are you saying the fire department doesn't have a problem, or do they already have a plan? Do they know what they would do in the event of X, Y, or Z?
Should this the way that it's currently proposed, staff has proposed that condition, and those details in that emergency response plan and how an incident would be addressed would be, those details would be developed during the site plan approval process. They have not been developed as of tonight.
So I had a follow-up on that. So understanding that, but then who oversees? Because if this is new technology to you as well, and possibly new technology to the fire chief, how are we going to find out if the response is the correct response for that, to make sure that plan is the correct one to be using?
Sure. And so, it's a unique plan. It's developed with input from the applicant and based on a lot of the technical information. At the heart of it, I won't be able to cover all of the technical jargon. At the heart of it is electrical. Again, we do have experience with large industrial electrical-based development in the county, whether it be big switching stations for Dominion Virginia Power, which we did on the other side of the road, or with some of our manufacturing facilities. They all have very large electrical components. Many of them have battery storage systems, for instance, to power equipment and other things within the facility. So I don't know that it's completely the idea of addressing electrical issues and electrical emergency response situations. I don't know that in and of itself would be unique to James City County. But certainly this application as a battery storage facility, we do not have one of those here in James City County yet.
No, but we do know that when the switching station was proposed, one of the issues that arose was the question of whether our fire department could respond directly or had to wait until Dominion arrived on the scene in order to provide access. And so, I think that there's some issues out there that might use a little bit more.
Well, I think too, once it gets to the stage where the fire department will look at it, then they'll do all the research and information and put an SOP out as far as when you arrive, what are the things you do.
Mm-hmm.
And, without knowing all the components, especially being something new, and we always put a SOP out that says, okay, these are standing operating procedures. When you pull up on the scene, these are the things you do. This is who you notify. This is the distance you remain. This, can you get into the area or not? Some areas are locked out because of the danger of being in that area during an emergency. So it may be a lockout procedure that they monitor the conditions and clear everybody within an area of X. So that would be something that Chief and his staff would have to put together, force that would go into your plan that then would go to the applicant and say, these are the procedures, and this is what, and working with the applicant, understanding that, okay, these are things you can do, these are things you can't do. Just like anything else, in any fire, any emergency we go to, we have, standing operating procedures that we follow that tell us don't or do and what we can and can't, how far we can take something without getting further help. Because of course we can't have all the stuff in the county that would handle. We may end up being, a secondary to like Virginia Power when they have those big ones that, they don't want anybody in there till after they clear it. We may have to be surrounded and keep it safe. So that would be something that Chief and his staff would pull together, correct?
And every bit, and not to read through all of the conditions, but in summary, some of those bullet points do require prior to any site plan approvals that plan be approved by both the county fire chief, the county police chief, and the requirement of the condition also requires a mutually agreed upon schedule for the facility operator to provide information sessions and training for public safety personnel relative to a possible emergency response situation, as well as posting and providing all required contact numbers and contact information to be posted on site.
So you're
as
saying
well.
before the site plan can be approved,
Or any construction can
the
begin.
fire department and all the first responders have their plan in place. We can feel confident prior to anything else taking place that they've got it covered.
Yes, and before any construction can begin as proposed, that would require the approval of the fire chief and the police chief.
I guess I'd invite the applicant to make comment about what Mr. Lyman has indicated here.
I guess I'll address a couple of things. One is when we talked about NFPA. So the system actually is designed to meet, there is an NFPA standard for batteries and for containment of batteries. And this system is designed to meet or exceed the containment requirements for battery storage, which basically means that the fire is contained within the container. So it won't burn through the container walls. So it's designed for that. It also has blowout panels, essentially is what it is, so that gases won't build up in it and cause an explosion, which is, you probably heard 15 years ago or so, the battery in Arizona, that's what happened. So there's been improved designs to fight fires or to prevent fires. And there's also dry chemical fire prevention built into the unit itself as well. So there's a number of different levels of fire protection built into the system that should help put itself out, or at a minimum, self-contain itself. And then there was another, he brought up a health issue about the hydrogen fluoride. So the fire does produce hydrogen fluoride. It produces it at the level that exceeds the consumption that would cause harm with it for 8 minutes, but the fire only produces it for less than a minute. And so it doesn't produce enough to actually exceed the levels that are toxic. and it would be contained inside the battery itself in any event.
Mr. Quinlan, I think you indicated to me today, the application indicates that it would be about a 7-month process for the actual construction of the project, but that it's not likely that that's going to happen immediately because of some other details that need to still be worked out. I guess I'm looking to get a little bit more information on some of these questions before we take a final action on it. I don't know if the board is willing to defer this item.
Well, it can't go anywhere where, even if we approve it, it can't go anywhere without staff's recommendation and
Well,
work, right?
I
Or is
understand that, but there may be some other issues that we want to just make sure we're on top of before we grant this approval, because there are some things that may.
Will the fire suppression
Well, I'm
be
not talking
halon?
about no, I'm not talking
No, I'm
necessarily
just,
about that.
no, I'm asking something totally different.
Yeah.
The fire suppression, will that be a halon system that,
Dry chemical, I'm not exactly
Okay.
sure if it's halon. I'll have
Okay.
to check.
I'm good with whatever you want.
Well, let me just ask staff if they think they can provide some additional information within the next month, or would it be 2 months?
So I would recommend maybe that we could postpone this for 1 month. I don't want to overcommit Chief Ash's time, but I think, getting him connected up, him and his team connected up with the applicant at this point, have us kind of all come back here. Let me check with him first, but before I volunteer him, but we'll work towards that schedule and again, sort of work through some of those details. And, I think having some of that other information at your next meeting in November would be
So I would move to defer this item to the November 8th meeting of the Board of Supervisors. We can have a vote on that, Mr. Stevens, for you.
Ms. Sadler?
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Mr. Hippel?
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye. Okay, thank you. All right, so we'll provide any questions that we have about this item, and hopefully we might take advantage of some of the questions that Mr. Lyman presented to us tonight to investigate this matter further. Okay. 22-0016, 141 Blow Flats Road, battery storage. Ms. Condon.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. After the deferral at the October 11th Board of Supervisors meeting, staff has had additional meetings with the applicant and his design team. Staff included planning staff, the building official, fire chief, fire marshal, and Todd Cannon with our regional hazardous materials for the Virginia Department of Emergency Management. Staff also had conversations with James City County Police separately. Following these discussions, staff has included 3 new conditions to ensure enhanced protections. These conditions include number 7, fire safety measures, which requires additional safety measures be incorporated into the design of the facility and guarantees this design meets the 2018 Virginia Statewide Fire Prevention Code. Number 8, hazard mitigation analysis requires that a failure modes and effects analysis or equivalent will be completed prior to site plan approval and reviewed and approved by the fire official. Number 11, commissioning report requires that a commissioning report, including initial acceptance testing, be submitted for review and approval by the fire official prior to the final CO for the site. Staff's proposed amendment to condition number 17 increases the number of months from 48 to 60 for the implementation timeline of this special use permit. I am happy to answer any questions you may have, and Lieutenant Hicklin and the applicant are available to answer any questions as well. I'll now turn things over to Chief Ash. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Sorry I wasn't with you last meeting when we discussed the fire safety portions. So I just want to address, I think Paxton did a good job of including all that information for us. But in our meeting that we had with the applicant, again, we included Fire Marshal Lamb, who's also here with us, and Todd Cannon from Virginia Department of Emergency Management. We took an opportunity to really look at what are the hazards associated with battery storage, because it is relatively new for us. And while there isn't an NFPA standard adopted, there is a draft of one. However, it is included in the 2018 Fire Prevention Code for the state of Virginia. It includes a number of conditions, and we went ahead and included those in the amendments specific to this SUP. Normally, we would get to that portion during the site plan review and as we get into construction, but we did go ahead and work with the applicant and put those in these SUP conditions. So they address things like early detection. For us, the important things is, can we access a site? Do we know about an emergency early? And do we have the right measures to contain or mitigate any hazard that would be there? And so for us, early detection systems, there's both smoke and heat detectors. There's also gas detection on site. All of those will trip the system, if you will, and shut it down and disconnect it from the grid. And certainly the applicant can talk in the more specific details of those systems. And there's also a fire suppression system that's a dry chemical. And then most importantly, one of the issues with the battery type storage systems is thermal runaway, where the batteries could continue to produce heat. So this system will have a water pipe system connected to each row of batteries, and the fire department will have a connection there where we can essentially flood the cabinets to provide cooling. So I think early detection, working with them as we get into the specifics of how we address any emergencies there, access to the site, good water supply system that's there, and we've included all those as conditions in the SUP.
Thank you very much, Chief, for that information and for the conditions that you provided here. Anybody have any questions for staff or the Chief?
Chief, I had two questions for you. Number one, when you guys were looking at this, obviously this is a fairly new technology. Do you have any idea? This just came up in my mind right now, so I apologize for not giving you a heads up on this before, because this is off the cuff for me too. How many are there very many other similar type of battery storage facilities in Virginia or in our local area? And if so, how prevalent are they? And then secondly, if we know, what has the safety record been on any of them?
Sure. So I understand there's a number of pilot programs, one in Hanover, one in New Kent, one up in Loudoun County. I believe there's another one in Powhatan. I think they've typically been associated with a solar facility, and I think that was, learning through the process a little bit, was based on tax credits. So often there's a tax credit benefit by associating those with solar facilities, and those have all been pilot programs. There's certainly others in our research across the country that have been done as well, but certainly this is the first in James City County, and I think the first in our immediate area.
Okay. And then the second question was, in my aviation career, I've learned that NiCad batteries or lithium-ion batteries in airplanes are really a deadly mix, and there's about thermal runaway and things like that. So my question was, I was sort of curious, was I had never heard of. Of course, you wouldn't have it on an airplane, but yeah, water to control a thermal runaway. Is there a sort of a history of that kind of a system being effective, and is it in use elsewhere, or is it fairly new technology to deal with?
In our research, and I think the applicant provided some of this information when we met as well, there's been other occurrences over the last, some in the last few years, some over the last 15 years across the country involving batteries, and we've certainly seen some of those things on the news and things about different. And when we worked with the Virginia Department of Emergency Management, they'd actually recently, Todd Cannon, our local hazmat officer, had recently done a training for the hazardous materials teams across the state about lithium-ion batteries and the hazards associated. And their recommendation in training is really cooling and submerging, and in this case in the cabinet, really just flooding that cabinet and filling it up. It's no cabinet's technically completely leak-proof, but really filling that cabinet up to a point that seals it. The chemical system that's in place breaks the chemical chain reaction to stop the fire, but doesn't really offer much cooling. So really being able to hook to the fire department connection and flood those cabinets provides that cooling that ultimately stops the thermal runaway. And they're also, even though these are, if you've had a chance to look at the site plan, number of rows of these, there are a series of cabinets in each of those rows. The fireproofing in those containers also prevents the spread from one bank to the next. And then the separation between rows of units also prevent that if we did have one experienced thermal runaway, isolate that to that one area without it spreading to the other rows of batteries. some people believe when they say lithium, there is some concern. Some folks believe that you can't put water on lithium, but these are lithium ion batteries, which water is the best extinguishing agent for.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions for the chief? Chief, thank you very much for both being here tonight to make this presentation and for all the work that you and members of your staff put into this question.
Thank you.
And to the state for helping out with that as well. So any other comments or discussion? Not, do I have a motion on this matter?
I'll move the motion.
For the approval of SUP 220016. Mr. Stevens, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Hippel?
Aye. Once again, that road, so.
Ms. Sadler?
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Virtually no traffic on the road. As a result of this project.